Hello, dear friends. Good afternoon. Today's program is about when and under what conditions this will happen and whether it will happen at all. Azerbaijan will start taking responsibility for its actions. Azerbaijan of Aliyev, a country where one person and his clan, one person decides everything. I was asked to record a large program about history. You know, this program can be made endless. This gives nothing. What kind of history can be written when Azerbaijan is a state that was invented by the Turkish army in 1918? Otherwise, it would not have come into existence. And a nation whose name was used by Stalin's order in 1936, and whose independence arose as a result of the collapse of the USSR in 1991. That's all you need to know about the history of Azerbaijan. Read Strabo, where he describes a large part of the territory of modern Azerbaijan as Armenia. On the Armenian side, there are thousands of books, science. On the side of Azerbaijan, zero. There is nothing. A few Khanates under Persian control. Tatar Khanates. That's all Azerbaijan has. There is nothing more. What history can we talk about? What is even worth discussing? If you write in the comments and want to hear a detailed analysis, I can do that. You can subscribe to courses about the Armenian world. Support historians. There, I share a lot of important information. I can also do a broadcast, of course. Today, we will talk about when Aliyev's Azerbaijan will get a blow, will be stopped. Maybe never. Let's analyze the facts. What needs to be considered? Let's talk about Azerbaijan's allies. Thanks to whom is Azerbaijan able to conduct such a policy? Aliyev's Azerbaijan. We are now talking about Azerbaijan, Aliyev, not globally about Azerbaijan. So, the Russian Federation, the Treaty on Strategic Alliance and Interaction with the Russian Federation, which was signed in 2022, 2 days before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, provides for close cooperation and consultations in foreign policy. It is happening. Joint security, including military support and combating separatist movements on its territory, is happening. And economic cooperation, briefly. That is, in fact, Russia is one of, but not the closest ally of Azerbaijan. Undoubtedly, trade and energy. The sale of Russian energy resources using Azerbaijani logistics allows Russia to finance the war against Ukraine. Russia is Azerbaijan's second trading partner. Second, dear friends. Gas agreements. Strange, isn't it? Despite the fact that both countries are exporters. Yes, it happens. Military cooperation. These are constant military exercises and arms sales. The largest. But all this was until 2020. Now Russia has no weapons to arm its hordes of barbarians and chmobiks fighting against Ukraine. Therefore, in this direction, Turkey has replaced Russia. And now, the main partner of Azerbaijan in military support is undoubtedly Turkey. Russia is playing a double game. Russia doesn't care about Armenia. And what can be expected from Armenia? Russia has compromising material on certain individuals in Armenia. It uses the non-disclosure of this, that's one. to control Armenia. Russia surrendered Artsakh, gifted it to Azerbaijan. Together with Turkey and other countries, that's two, yes. There you go. And in fact, it is now receiving a logistical corridor to continue the war against Ukraine from Azerbaijan and Turkey, paid with Armenians. Meanwhile, many Armenians are fighting for Russia, but that makes sense. Thousands dead. Of course, you have to fight for the state that betrayed the country of your ancestors. Certainly. Ironclad logic. There's nothing even to say. Therefore, this is approximately about Russia. So you understand, dear friends. This is about Russia. And who are the main allies of Azerbaijan? Of course, it's Turkey. Turkey and Azerbaijan. Two nations, one state, two peoples, one state. One state, two nations. It can get confusing here. That is, there is an official military political alliance between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Undoubtedly. Joint exercises. Constant arms supplies. Let's call them Bayraktars, but indeed the supplies are very large. This is a large number of Turkish officers. This is the leadership of the Azerbaijani General Staff by Turkey. This is the Turkish Special Forces, which are constantly present in Azerbaijan. Since little has changed with the Azerbaijani army, it is better equipped, incredibly better than it was in the 90s. It is larger in number, but the quality of the Azerbaijani soldier has not changed. It is the same, and it is clear that without Turkey, without Russia, and without Israel, Azerbaijan, in military terms, can withstand a military confrontation with the current Armenia, but cannot withstand a military confrontation with an Armenia. That might be, or might not be. It all depends on the Armenians. Therefore, one nation, two states is not just a slogan. It is the foundation of the entire foreign policy of Turkey and Azerbaijan. Economic integration, number one. Turkish investments, transport corridors, and plans for what the Turks and Azerbaijanis call the Zangezur corridor. Therefore, without a doubt, Turkey is number one. There is no doubt about it here. For Azerbaijan, the ally is Pakistan. This is a military and ideological partner that participates in all of Azerbaijan's wars. Turkey. In the first war, it sent thousands of mujahideen from Afghanistan and organized logistics for General Dostum, who were ignominiously defeated when the Armenians fought. And in the second war, when the Armenians were ordered to lose, and largely due to traitors, Armenia lost. They also participated. Pakistan, by the way, is one of the few countries in the world, in fact, the only one, that does not recognize Armenia's right to exist. Such a remarkable country, consisting of hundreds of tribes, artificially created, cobbled together from what was available to contain India. Therefore, military aid from Pakistan is also very significant. This includes technology exchange and intelligence sharing, undoubtedly. Therefore, Pakistan, we can say, if not number two, then number three. And who is number two? Of course, it's Israel. This is Azerbaijan's main technological ally. Weapons from Israel. For Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is the largest buyer of Israeli weapons. Money doesn't smell. This includes spike, harop, and reconnaissance, data, and systems. There is a large number of Israeli consultants. The fact is that Israeli intelligence has access to the Iranian border through the territory of Azerbaijan. Energy, since Azerbaijan supplies oil to Israel through Turkey. That is, Erdogan opens his mouth and threatens to take Jerusalem, then goes to the next room and permits it. a tanker with oil and gas going to Israel, such an honest Muslim, as they say, and the leader of the Islamic world, Erdogan, of course it's funny. The United Kingdom is an energy partner. More than 35% of all Azerbaijani oil and gas belongs to the United Kingdom. That's the support. That's the price for which the United Kingdom defends Azerbaijan's interests in the Western world, as money is the most important thing. At least for the United Kingdom, and not only for the United Kingdom. The main investor in Azerbaijan's oil and gas sector is number one. And accordingly, London actively promotes Baku's interests on the international stage. Of course, in energy, but not only that. Therefore, London conducts active diplomacy about Azerbaijan. For Azerbaijan, regarding the southern gas corridor, undoubtedly. In Europe, it's Hungary, which Azerbaijan has bought. Orban's Hungary. In fact, this is the ambassador of Azerbaijan and Hungary. During its first entry, it supported Azerbaijan in the Karabakh War. I will speak very briefly. Therefore, gas, investments, Turkish lobbying, all of this is working. Georgia is a quiet logistical ally, Azerbaijan. Geotransport and energy corridors pass through Georgia. Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan. Southern gas corridor. Therefore, Georgia tries, of course, to maintain neutrality, but de facto is a reliable ally. Baku, and very partially, we can call the European Union allies of Azerbaijan, especially the European Union, if we compare it to the USA and the United States. The thing is, you see how, as they say, Azerbaijan is friends with everyone, right? The West wants to find and have an alternative to Russian and Iranian gas. And does Azerbaijan provide it? It's logical. The political price for this turns a blind eye to the ethnic cleansing of Armenians and to Azerbaijan's actions against Armenia. You see how it works. In principle, nothing new since 2015. There you go. Look, Azerbaijan currently occupies 1% of Armenia's territory. This is, by the most modest estimates, 1%. And part of this territory, Artsvashan, has been occupied, dear friends, for over 30 years. And the majority of this territory has been controlled by the Azerbaijani armed forces since 2021. 1% of the territory. This is a real challenge to international law. However, the reaction of the West, and especially the USA, remains sluggish. Why? Let's analyze it now. Why does the USA tolerate the occupation of part of Armenia? Small scale and gray areas. Why is this happening? Aliyev, I will tell you, very skillfully plays on the legal, conditional ambiguities of borders. There was no official demarcation after the collapse of the USSR. That's the issue. And this allows the West to pretend that the issue is debatable. Well, moving on. The West, collectively the USA and the EU, do not want to quarrel with Turkey. This is logical. We will gradually reach a point where the West will take action. And the United States, I will provide and explain. The West does not want to quarrel with Turkey. Absolutely. The USA does not want to destabilize relations with Ankara. And Ankara directly supports Baku. Therefore, the geopolitical priorities right now are not Armenia. The focus of the USA is on Ukraine, Taiwan, the Middle East. The South Caucasus is currently on the periphery of United States geopolitics. There is a game to keep Armenia in the pro-American vector. That is, Washington does not want, of course, to push Armenia although it is impossible, into the arms of Moscow, but therefore acts gently, and it does not want to push Azerbaijan into the arms of Moscow. But with Armenia, it is impossible, although in one of the conversations, in principle, such a viewpoint was expressed by one of the American representatives. Azerbaijan is an important part of American policy. America does not want to lose Azerbaijan for it to become a part of Russia. Although, as much as it is possible, and as obviously Russia would desire, Turkey will not allow it, and Russia does not currently have the strength for it. Next, we see that this is precisely why Azerbaijan allows itself to act quite with impunity, as Aliyev feels his impunity. He is confident in Turkey's support, in Europe's tacit approval due to Gaza, Europe's tacit approval. He knows that the USA will not intervene seriously. For now, a serious red line has not been crossed. And this is the goal of today's broadcast, which I will tell you about. Based on the conversations I've had, the meetings, what this red line is for Azerbaijan, what could change the game. Friends, this is a direct attack on Syunik. A direct attack. Accordingly, this is a threat to the North-South corridor. This could lead to possible intervention by Iran, and the US might respond more harshly. I'm not saying in the most extreme way, just more harshly. There will be intervention by Russia and Iran, and the US will simply be forced to get involved. Dear friends, to not concede. Russia and Iran in the region. Accordingly, in such a situation, there will be a sharp activation, currently it is not active at all, of the Armenian diaspora in the US. Pressure on Congress, mobilization of public opinion, lobbying, and the upcoming elections, in which the votes of the Armenian community are important, very important, because there are many Armenians in the US. It's not 1 million people, nor 2. And in California, they are decisive. That's why it matters. In fact, there are 3 within the framework of the US military strategy. 3 response formats, depending on how far Azerbaijan goes, and how much Armenia and the diaspora manage to mobilize. You see, a lot depends on this as well. No one will defend Armenia if it doesn't defend itself. No one will do the Armenians' work for them, dear friends. Never. Just as no one ever does anyone else's work. If Ukraine hadn't put up fierce resistance and defeated the Russian army near Kyiv, no one would have done this work for Ukraine. I have told you about this many times. Accordingly, the first scenario. Azerbaijan holds on to the occupied 1 to 2% of Armenia's territory, continues pressure on Syunik, but without direct invasion. There is no war, but constant tension and creeping expansion. Actions of the West, Europe, and the USA. Tolerant silence and expressions of concern. But we must consider that they might express very deep concern. There is such a tool as well. When you deeply sympathize with a person who was beaten on the street, but you can deeply sympathize with them. That's how geopolitics works. So what will the United States do? It will be a condemning statement from the State Department, but without consequences. Gentle calls for peace, negotiations. Yes, that's how it will happen. Support for humanitarian initiatives, working through various organizational funds. Naturally, Shiv Menendez is no longer there, but others are. Rubio, the Secretary of State, continued to press, but the White House will not seriously intervene. They will intensify work with Pashinyan to distance Armenia from Russia, but without provoking Baku. Risks for Armenia. What are they in this case? The loss of part of Shunik is definite, and in fact without official recognition, and the undermining of trust in the West within Armenia. Of course, an increase in migration and demoralization of society. This is the soft scenario where Azerbaijan holds and, without direct invasion, continues to capture territory inch by inch, staging provocations and shelling, what it is doing now. The second scenario, dear friends, is the red line already. This is the invasion of Shunik. That is, Aliyev moves to a forceful scenario. A direct attack on Shunik with the aim to break through, as the Turks call it, the Zangezur corridor without Yerevan's control. The behavior of the USA. What is the protocol of the United States? A sharp statement from the White House and the State Department, indeed sharp without irony this time. Imposing sanctions against certain officials of Azerbaijan. Freezing military contacts and contracts certainly completely. Increasing aid to Armenia. I am talking about the protocol now. Military logistics, air defense observation system, pressure on Turkey, serious pressure, unofficial, behind closed doors. Calm down, or your NATO membership is at risk, something like that. And of course, once again, the same thing is happening. The Armenian diaspora is raising a massive wave in the media and in Congress. Risks for Azerbaijan, in this case, international isolation. For one, loss of part of the Western markets, part of oil and gas. For two, and the threat, theoretical, I would say, of conflict with Iran. And now, Azerbaijan's large-scale aggression. Scenario number 3, a major Chiba war. What happens then? Let's imagine. Aliyev starts a full-scale war with the aim of taking Shunik, which is 6,500 square kilometers, encompassing all of southern Armenia and creating a land corridor to Nakhchivan. Possibly an attempt to destabilize all of Armenia. The behavior of the United States in this case follows protocol, as I have told you. Declaration of an emergency in the UN Security Council. Number 1. Massive sanctions against Baku and possibly Ankara. There are variations. Transfer of defensive weapons to Armenia, once again. Offensive weapons are not even considered in this case. Radar systems, air defense systems, and systems, short-range air defense systems. Pressure on Russia is anticipated, so that it does not interfere with the West's actions. Well, not to assist Azerbaijan. And the creation of an international diplomatic coalition to stop the aggression. What could be the outcomes? The threat of an international war. Involvement of Iran. This is the scenario that everyone fears. And in Washington, I tell you, they fear this scenario. They truly fear it. And this is the only scenario, remember, dear friends, in which the USA will move from words to actions. That's how it is. Subscribe to the School of Geopolitics. Thank you. Subscribe to other projects on the channel, including the Telegram channel. For today, regarding the Southeast region, a similar blitz. I might do a larger broadcast, but in principle, there's nothing to talk about yet. I've said almost everything I wanted to say within the framework of real politics. Dear friends, this evening, I will try to comment on the possible, and not only possible, rapprochement between China and the European Union. It's an interesting topic. And now the most relevant. But if I can do it, it will be in 5 or 6 hours, no earlier. That's it. Thank you for watching me. And see you next time.